For over a century, the movie theater was the sacred cathedral of human storytelling, where collective dreams were shared in the dark. But today, those grand halls are falling silent, replaced by the cold, algorithmic glow of streaming feeds in empty living rooms. Hollywood is currently locked in the grip of a staggering $100 billion content crisis. Studios are spending more money than ever before to produce movies and television, yet they are losing billions in the process. This is the story of how the streaming wars broke the film industry, and why cinema, as we know it, is quietly dying. To understand the root of this collapse, we have to travel back to the launch of Netflix's streaming service. When Netflix began dominating home entertainment, legacy Hollywood studios panicked. Terrified of becoming obsolete, giants like Disney, Warner Brothers, and Paramount decided they needed their own platforms. This triggered the streaming wars, a gold rush where studios prioritized subscriber counts over actual profits. To attract subscribers, these studios launched into an unprecedented content spending spree, pouring billions into new shows. In 2022 alone, the top media companies spent a combined $140 billion on content production. But this massive injection of cash did not lead to a golden age of cinema. It led to a quality crisis. With studios demanding dozens of new movies and shows every month, resources were stretched to the absolute limit. Writing rooms were rushed, directors were given less prep time, and visual effects houses were completely overwhelmed. The result was a wave of mediocre, formulaic content that felt manufactured rather than crafted. As the streaming library grids grew larger, the cultural impact of individual films shrank. But the crisis was not just limited to streaming. It spilled over into the box office. In an effort to guarantee hits, studios doubled down on massive blockbusters, franchises, and sequels. Budgets skyrocketed, with individual blockbusters routinely costing $250 million to $300 million to make. When marketing and distribution costs are added, these movies need to make over $600 million just to break even. To justify these budgets, movies became increasingly reliant on green screen environments and visual effects. Instead of building real sets or shooting on location, studios constructed entire worlds inside computers. This VFX-heavy pipeline led to a phenomenon known as Marvel sludge, movies that look flat, gray, and visually lifeless. Visual effects artists were forced to work 100-hour weeks to meet impossible deadlines, leading to unfinished, rubbery CGI. At the same time, scripts were constantly rewritten during production, forcing artists to re-render entire action sequences at the last minute. Audiences began to notice, and the initial awe of digital spectacles turned into CGI fatigue. In 2023, the system cracked, as a series of massive franchise sequels flopped at the box office. Movies that were once guaranteed moneymakers lost studios tens of millions of dollars. But while studios are struggling with budgets, the movie theaters themselves are facing a fight for survival. For decades, theaters relied on a theatrical window, a 90-day period where a movie was exclusively shown in cinemas. This guaranteed that if you wanted to see the latest blockbuster, you had to buy a ticket. But during the streaming wars, studios destroyed this window, shortening it to 45 days or releasing movies direct to streaming. Audiences quickly realized that they only had to wait a few weeks to watch the same movie from the comfort of their couch. This shift in consumer behavior devastated theater revenues, pushing major chains like Cineworld into bankruptcy. To offset the loss of ticket sales, theaters raised the prices of concessions to astronomical levels. Today, a family trip to the movies can easily cost over $80 for tickets, drinks, and snacks. For many, the high cost, combined with the lack of high-quality films, made the theater trip feel like a bad deal. This has created a vicious cycle. Fewer viewers lead to higher prices, which drives even more viewers away. The cultural habit of going to the movies is eroding, especially among younger generations who prefer short-form content. TikTok, YouTube, and gaming are competing for the same attention spans that once belonged to filmmakers. And in the battle for attention, a 2-hour movie struggles to compete with a 15-second dopamine hit. Yet, the crisis goes deeper than just technology and economics. It is an artistic crisis. In the streaming era, movies are no longer viewed as cultural events or works of art. Instead, they are referred to by media executives as content assets, filler to keep subscribers paying their monthly fees. When films are treated as assets, they are designed by data analytics rather than human filmmakers. Algorithms dictate the plot beats, the casting choices, and even the emotional high points of the script. This data-driven approach removes the creative risks that have historically produced the greatest films in cinema history. Without risk, movies become safe, predictable, and ultimately forgettable. This has led to a stagnation of original stories, as studios rely on existing intellectual property to minimize financial risk. We are stuck in a loop of endless reboots, remakes, and spin-offs that offer nothing new to the cultural conversation. Faced with this content saturation, audiences are starting to disconnect. They are overwhelmed by the sheer volume of content, yet they struggle to find anything worth watching. This is known as the paradox of choice, where too many options lead to fatigue and inaction. So, how did we get here, and where does the path lead? The streaming model was built on cheap debt and the promise of infinite growth. For years, platforms offered low subscription prices and spent massive sums to capture market share. But now that interest rates have risen and subscriber growth has flattened, the bill has come due. To survive, streaming services are raising prices, cracking down on password sharing, and introducing ads. The very thing that made streaming attractive, convenience and low cost, is slowly disappearing. We are essentially paying cable TV prices again, but for 10 different apps instead of one. In this fragmented landscape, the shared cultural experience of cinema is lost. We no longer talk about the same movies at the water cooler because everyone is watching something different. The grand cultural moments, like the midnight releases of major blockbusters, are becoming a thing of the past. Instead, we watch movies in isolation, scrolling on our phones at the same time. This isolation has changed how we engage with stories. A movie watched on a laptop screen with constant notifications is not the same as a movie watched in a dark hall with strangers. In the cinema, you are forced to focus, to surrender yourself to the filmmaker's vision for 2 hours. At home, you are in control, which often means skipping through slow scenes and losing the emotional build-up. This loss of focus is changing the very structure of the stories being told. Filmmakers are being forced to write faster, louder scripts to prevent viewers from looking at their phones. The art of slow cinema, of quiet moments and character study, is being systematically erased. Yet, despite the grim outlook, there is still hope for the medium. The recent success of original, director-driven films shows that audiences still crave authentic stories. When a filmmaker is given creative control and a reasonable budget, the results can be spectacular. Films like Oppenheimer and Dune proved that grand, complex stories can still dominate the global box office. But these successes are becoming the exceptions rather than the rule. The mid-budget movie, which once formed the backbone of the film industry, has virtually disappeared. Today, you either have a $300 million mega blockbuster or a tiny independent film, with nothing in between. This polarization is hollowing out the industry, leaving no space for new talent to develop. Perhaps the age of cinema as the dominant cultural force is simply over, and a new era of fragmented content has begun.